My name is Sandy Adomaitis, the social media director for the Page International Screenwriting Awards, and your host for the Writers Hangout, a podcast that celebrates the many stages of writing, from inspiration to the first draft, revising, getting a project made, and everything in between. We'll talk to the best and the brightest in the entertainment industry and create a space where you can hang out, learn from the pros, and have fun. Hey writers, it's Sandy coming to you from Studio City, California, the jewel of the San Fernando Valley, and home to the world-famous Baked Potato Jazz Club, the place where Bonnie Lee Bakley unfortunately met Robert Blake, who did not do the time for his crime. Allegedly. Boy, do we have a terrific show for you. Our guest is suspense author and travel journalist Dawn M. Barclay, here to talk about her book, Vacations Can Be Murder, a travel guide that gives you the down and dirty on exactly where the major crimes occurred and where the bodies are buried in New England. Writers' reference books can be great resources for screenplay ideas, and this book offers endless ideas on every page. Maybe the next idea for your new script will be on page 43. So buckle up as we travel the criminal landscape. Warning, this episode contains content that may be sensitive, distressing, or inappropriate for certain audiences. Please note, we talk about violence, murder, and sexual assault that you may find disturbing. Let's start the show. Dawn M. Barclay, welcome to the Writers Hangout. Thank you so much for joining us.
Well, thanks so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
You are incredibly clever. I adored this book, Vacations Can Be Murder. Now, you are an award-winning fiction and nonfiction author and wrote the Lowell Thomas Gold-winning travel guide, Traveling Different, as well as several psychological and domestic thrillers as D.M. Barr. Now, I don't know which is your real name, Dawn.
Oh, it's Dawn Barclay. I write all my nonfiction under my real name because I was a magazine writer a long time ago and I wrote under that name. When I started writing fiction, I chose D.M. Barr.
When did you know you wanted to become a writer, Dawn?
When I was really young, I would write poems or little satires. And my grandmother, who lived with us, would say, "Oh my gosh, did you really write this? You didn't write this, did you?" As if that was plagiarizing. It was like semi-accusing me of plagiarism. But what I really learned from that is that when you write, you get attention, because she was so very proud.
Now, can you tell us about Vacations Can Be Murder? And for the writers out there, I'm telling you, Dawn has done all the research for you writers. This is a great book to pick up, because if you're writing a thriller, if you're writing a mystery, go look through all these stories. She's done the hard work for you, but I digress. Please tell us about Vacations Can Be Murder.
Great. There are 2 volumes so far. It's going to be eventually 10 or 12 volumes, each covering a different section of the United States. They are true crime travel guides. So I bring you in each state. The first one was New England, and I covered the 6 states of New England. And the second one, which just came out, is Mid-Atlantic, and it covers New York, New Jersey, and Pennsylvania.
It's in my Amazon cart. I'm going to do it as you talk. Go ahead.
Right. So for each state, I will have small blurbs about the major crimes that occurred in that state, going all the way back in some cases to the 1600s until publication. And because they're small blurbs, I list a long reading list of where you can read to learn more about each of these crimes. And then I talk about destinations that have to do with the crime. So hotels and restaurants that have a crime or justice theme. I also have haunted restaurants and hotels, because I believe that where there's a soul not at rest, perhaps murder was involved. And then I will have locations that are attractions related to crime or justice, including museums. You might have police museums. You might have something like the Mutter Museum in Philadelphia, which is just macabre. I also have all the true crime tours and the ghost tours in those locations. I will include where everyone's buried, as long as I have that information, because if they're cremated or they were buried at sea, which sometimes happened in Maine, I don't have that information. And then I bring everything together in itineraries that break up the states into maybe 4 or 5 different sections. So you can, in a logical way, cover everything I've mentioned, because up to that point, it's all alphabetical by city or town. The very heart of the book, and what separates it from other books that are true crime, is that I give you the exact locations of where these things occurred. If it's an apartment building, I give you the apartment building address. If it's a business, I give you that address. If it's a private home, I do not give you the exact address, but I give you the block, like the 1 to 100 block of Main Street, because I don't want anybody outside a house gawking. And I also don't want to surprise the people who live there in case they didn't know they were in a home where a murder.
Right.
But I think that's what really separates the book from other travel books and also true crime books.
100%. Now, how do you know when it's time to stop researching and start writing? Because I can't imagine all the research you had to do.
Yeah, it takes me about a month per state. It takes me 6 months usually in total to get the book finished. And it is sort of nonstop research. I am constrained by number of pages because I know my publisher only wants us to run top 85,000 words. And so I have a sense of how many words I'm at any one time. And then I have to pick and choose what's going to fit in. Like in New York, for the New York crimes, if you didn't kill 4 or 5 people, you probably weren't getting in. I had to make some tough choices. And New York ran 30,000 words on its own. I mean, originally for the mid-Atlantic states, I was also going to include DC and Delaware and Maryland. And because New York, Pennsylvania, New Jersey had so much crime, I had to cut those other states off and relegate them to the capital edition, which I'm working on now.
Interesting. Now, if I was playing a guessing game, I don't know why, but I wouldn't think Pennsylvania had that many murders. I'm way off, I guess.
You are. There's a number of just actually really anti-Semitic and bias-related mass shootings. You all know about the Tree of Life in Pittsburgh. There were other ones just like that. I was very surprised by Pennsylvania because you think of it as the city of brotherly love in Philadelphia. And Quakers. I was raised going to a Quaker school. Supposed to be very nonviolent. And yet it is rife with crime.
Do you have any rituals when it comes to writing? What is your process?
Well, I usually start by slaughtering a small goat. Don't write in. Don't get PETA on me. I wish I could tell you I have a ritual. When I'm really in writing mode, I mean, I do other things except for writing, so I have to squeeze the writing in. And when I'm writing a novel, especially, I'm up at 4 a.m. because from 4 to 7, I can get 1,000 words in. And then I can go about the rest of the day. If I haven't gotten those 1,000 words in, I'll come back to it later in the day. But I can sort of write anywhere as long as it's quiet.
Now, I thoroughly enjoyed reading Vacations Can Be Murder. Great title, by the way. Did you have other titles?
I went through a couple that I wasn't thrilled with. And then I was walking the dog one day and it just came to me that I wanted to write Vacations Can Be Murder. And the subtitle of it is A True Crime Lover's Travel Guide to, and then wherever I'm writing about.
It's just perfect. And I love that you were out walking the dog. That's when the best things come to writers, when they're not writing sometimes.
Yeah. She's the only one I don't neglect.
What is your dog's name?
Harley. And she's actually sitting right next to me.
Harley.
Yes.
Is Harley named after anybody?
Nah, my son named her, I think, after Harley Quinn. And she is a rescue, as most of my dogs are. And she's half pit bull and half Labrador. So I'd say she's a pitador.
If you don't mind, will you send me a picture of Harley and can I use her on social media?
She would be honored.
Oh, that would be great. Now, when reading the book, because I'm from Connecticut, I was really fascinated by the Connecticut murders. Can we go over a couple of them? I think the listeners would like to hear. Now, a terrible thing happened in Cheshire, Connecticut. And coincidentally, the husband in the story now lives on my niece's street. And I have seen him. And it just, I really connected to the story because of that. Could you read that blurb to us?
Sure, but I will ask ahead of time that for your listeners' forgiveness, because I'm going to mispronounce names.
And what we're going to be discussing, if you think in any way it might trigger you, please just skip ahead a couple of minutes.
Yeah, this was one of the most violent parts of that book. Okay, so here you go. Cheshire is the site of the highly publicized home invasion murders by Stephen, now Linda, Hayes, and Joshua Komisarjevsky. On July 23rd, 2007, they destroyed the lives of Dr. William Pettit, his wife Jennifer Hawk Pettit, and their daughters Haley, 17, and Michaela, 11. Hayes and Komisarjevsky claimed they initially intended only to rob the family, but after beating and imprisoning William in the basement, they forced Jennifer to withdraw $15,000 from the Bank of America branch in Cheshire, and then, once home again, raped her and her youngest daughter, Michaela. Then they tied the two daughters to their beds, doused them with gasoline, and lit a match. The girls died of smoke inhalation, the mother of strangulation. William, the father, survived. The assault led to the death penalty for the perpetrators, later commuted to 6 consecutive life sentences, plus 106 years after Connecticut abolished capital punishment.
Oh, my goodness, Dawn. There is a documentary on this. I think it's on HBO, and it might be just called Cheshire. It's just heartbreaking. Writers, I met a friend for lunch the other day. He's a talented author, but he told me he's lost in the middle of writing his own dark fantasy novel. It spans generations, and there are days he can't keep all his characters straight. I immediately started telling him about Novellium, our sponsor, a fantastic writing tool that quickly turns chaos into clear, well-organized stories. I told him, think of it as having a helpful story editor right by your side. Whether you're writing directly on Novellium or uploading an existing draft, your character and setting details, timeline events, and plot pacings are automatically pulled from your story to view at a glance. And in real time, Novellium catches the problems you'd miss on your own. Plot tangles, pacing issues, continuity errors, even character logic slips. Novellium isn't another AI content generator. It never writes for you or learns from your work. This is a privacy-first tool that leaves your voice untouched and never shares your data. Instead, Novellium keeps you in control through every stage of your writing process. It's your text editor, character files, continuity checker, and more in one organized, lightning-fast platform. You can even use Novellium to share your work securely with beta readers and keep track of their comments. Don't wait until your draft is finished. Get the most out of your writing this year with Novellium. Try Novellium Pro and get your first month free at novellium.so with code HANGOUT. That's NOVELIUM.so, and don't forget the code HANGOUT. And the Armistead, what a great movie. I didn't realize how much my home state was connected to all of this. Could you talk about that?
Sure. In 1839, the Armistead criminal and civil cases were tried at the Old State House in Hartford. The case revolved around a mutiny by and subsequent charging of 53 Mende African men, women, and children who had been captured and were being transported between Sierra Leone and Havana, Cuba, aboard the ship to serve as slaves. The story was the subject of the Steven Spielberg film Armistead. Several other Connecticut locations connected to the trial can be found at, and then I give a link.
I just love that about your book. And I did a lot of linking. And now I just thought this would be interesting for our writers because of Wally Lamb. Can you read the blurb that Wally Lamb, the author Wally Lamb, has a part of?
Sure. In 1986, at the Jamaican Progressive League, a club in Hartford's North End, Bonnie Forshaw stopped to get a beer and ended up committing a murder that brought her the longest jail sentence ever handed down to a woman in the state. Having endured a lifetime of sexual and spousal abuse, when Hector Freeman offered to buy her a drink and wouldn't let up when she turned him down, the encounter triggered her. She drew her handgun to fire a warning shot, where Freeman protected himself by using a pregnant woman, Joyce Amos, as a human shield. Forshaw's bullet killed her accidentally. Forshaw spent the majority of her time at the York Correctional Institution in Niantic, where author Wally Lamb taught a writing class for prisoners. Lamb took up her cause, believing she'd been over-sentenced, and thanks to his help, Forshaw was granted clemency after serving just 27 years of a 49-year sentence. Once released, she changed her name to Bonnie Jean Cook and helped other ex-convicts adjust to life on the outside until her death in 2022.
My goodness. This story, I don't know, it just really hit my heart. I've done work with abused women and battered women's shelters. So this really resonated with me. And man, Hector, I cannot believe you grabbed that woman who was pregnant to protect yourself. Just scum, Hector. That's all I can say. And this next one that I'm going to ask you to read, I grew up with this story, and we'll get back to that after you read about the Hartford circus fire.
Sure. Also in Hartford, the circus fire that killed 168 persons and injured between 412 and 700 others through trampling and asphyxiation occurred on July 6, 1944, the day the clowns cried, and is considered one of the country's worst fire disasters. The big top tent was coated in paraffin, plus gasoline or kerosene for waterproofing. Therefore, it was highly flammable. On top of that, some of the exits were blocked by animal chutes. Arson was suspected. Others blamed a carelessly tossed lit cigarette. A mentally ill man named Robert Dale Sagi, 21, of Circleville, Ohio, confessed to setting the fire, as well as up to 30 other blazes in Maine, New Hampshire, and Ohio. He later recanted his confession and was never tried in Connecticut. However, Sagi was indicted and convicted in Ohio on 2 charges of arson and served 8 out of a 40-year jail sentence. He died in 1997.
You know, I've always been surprised that a movie hasn't been made about that fire. Growing up, we always heard about a little girl. I guess she was about 5. She was blonde in a white dress, and she died, I believe, of asphyxiation. So her body was very well preserved, and she was buried in a site 1565. And she was known as Little Miss 1565 because nobody ever came and claimed her.
Wow.
Everyone was claimed but her, and probably her parents and maybe family members came from out of state. Maybe they were traveling through, and her relatives probably died in the fire. To this day, it has not been verified exactly who she is. That little girl has always been in my mind, and just to kind of see it in your book was very interesting. Also, I think that was the last time the big tops actually had canvas.
Could be.
Yeah, from then on, you would have it in arenas. I can't imagine the horror of it all. One celebrity was there. Do you remember the name Charles Nelson Riley?
Oh, yeah.
He was kind of like a professional guest on
Hollywood Squares.
Hollywood Squares, yes. He's very funny and very witty. He attended that showing as a kid, and he got out.
Oh, wow. I didn't know that. That's really interesting.
Yeah, so interesting. Thank you so much for reading those. Dawn, out of Vacations Can Be Murder, what case fascinated you the most?
Well, there's a couple. There's one from the New England edition, and there's one from the Mid-Atlantic. So for the New England edition, there was a case of John Salvi, I think the 4th. He was a hairdressing student, and he was told by his teacher one day that he wasn't ready to cut hair, and he snapped. And he was also like a neo-Nazi, and he drove down to Brookline from New Hampshire. He drove down to Brookline, Massachusetts. Yeah. And he shot up not one, but two Planned Parenthood centers, and then continued to Virginia. And that, I think he shot one up there, and that's where they captured him. And that's not the fascinating part. The fascinating part is that when he was shooting up one in Brookline, a woman named Deborah Gaines ran away. She got away, but he was like shooting after her as she ran away. And she was so traumatized by this that she took the child to term. She couldn't go back to try to get an abortion. So she had the baby. And then she sued Planned Parenthood for wrongful life. And they settled out of court because she felt they should have had better protection. So that it actually settled. And I found that such an interesting story because it wasn't necessarily about a lot of murders, but it was about something so different that I felt I had to include it in the book.
I wish it wasn't settled out of court so we can know the details.
She had to have gotten money if they settled out of court. And then in New York, I'm sure if your listeners are into true crime, they know the story of Albert Fish, who was sadomasochist. I think probably more sadist than masochist, but both. He went to this family, the Budd family in New York City, because one of the boys was advertising that he wanted work. And Fish had 6 children, I believe, on Long Island, and he was widowed. So he went to offer a job to this kid, Bud and his friend. And his plan was to take them to the house and murder them. But when he got to their family house in New York City, he sort of took a liking to his 10-year-old sister. And he decided he wanted to kill her. So he asked the parents if she could come with him to a birthday party. And they said yes for some god unknown reason.
Ugh.
And they never saw the child again. He took the child. He went to a cottage in Irvington, Westchester, where he murdered her and ate her. And he might have sexually abused her. It's sort of iffy. And then he wrote the story 6 years later and sent it to the mother. And it's just so horrible. And this guy had gone all around. He says that he went all around the country eating small children. There were 2 other children that I talked about that he kidnapped and ate. But he would sort of base himself in traditionally Black neighborhoods because he felt that there would be less active policing of those areas, which is sad in itself. He was finally caught, and I'll let people read how he was caught because it's really interesting. But when he was electrocuted, because he was a masochist, he had stuck pins into his scrotum. And because of that, they conducted electricity, I guess, and his electrocution took longer than it would have because you had metal absorbing the electricity.
Get out of town. Get out of town.
And that was a very abbreviated part of the story. It's really a horrible, horrible person.
Wow. Let's shake that off, Dawn. Okay. Now, are you reading, listening, or watching anything interesting you'd like to share with our audience?
Yeah. I actually try to swim every morning, and I have waterproof headphones, so I do listen to books while I am swimming. I get an hour of listening in a day. So recently, I've listened to 2 excellent books. One is The Extraordinary Life of Sam Hell by Robert Dugoni, which is just wonderful. The other one was City on Fire by Don Winslow, which is the first of a trilogy. I'm listening now I just listened to Atomic Habits, which my book club at my real estate office is covering. And now we've moved on to Fanatical Prospecting, which are both really, really good books. But most of my time is spent reading the books I'm editing for clients.
The Don Winslow book, I do hope to read that. I'm very proud of the fact that there's a social media site that I take care of for the Page International Screenwriting Awards, and Don Winslow followed me.
Oh, wow. Yeah. He's an excellent writer. And if anybody really likes Goodfellas, they'll really love these books.
Yes. Don, if you're listening, we love you. Can you tell our listeners where they can get Vacations Can Be Murder or any of your books?
Yeah, they're all available. If your listeners want to patronize local independent bookstores, which is always so a good idea, they can go to bookshop.org where you can find all of my books. You can also get them on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Kobo, anywhere you can buy books online. Or what I really love is if you can ask your library to stock them because they will do it for you. And then other people who can't afford the books can have access to them.
Great. And any social medias?
Yeah, you can find me at vacationscanbemurder.com. You can find out more about my fiction at D like David, M like Mary, Barr, BARR.com. And I'm on Facebook as, I believe, author DM Barr. Same thing with Instagram. I was on TikTok for a while. I'm not on TikTok as much as I was.
One of the things that I wanted to hang a lantern on for the writers out there is you found a niche. No one walked up to you and knocked on your door and said, hey, Dawn, why don't you write about this? And this is what I'm always preaching to the writers out there, that you have to actively be looking for what you want to write about. How did you land on this? It's such a perfect roadmap. How did you land on combining all these elements?
I was actually at TrueCon in Minneapolis, and VoucherCon is the World Mystery Convention. And I had a free day before the conference started, so I took a true crime tour of Minneapolis and St. Paul. And quite honestly, I was not somebody who really was into true crime. I love psychological thrillers, but I wasn't really following a lot of true crime. But I took this tour. And while I was on it, I thought, gee, I wonder if anybody's ever written a book listing all the true crime tours around the country. That was the seed of the idea, because I found no one had, which amazed me. But then I said, okay, how can I build upon this? And it just grew and grew to the point where at the end of each chapter, I also have victim resources. So if God forbid something horrible happens to you in that state, you'll know where to turn.
I thought that was so lovely that you had resources for people to reach out. Writers, go get these books. You'll find so many fascinating stories. And for people who want to just do something different while they're out on vacation, get this book. Thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you.
And that's a wrap for the Writers Hangout. Thanks so much for listening. If you enjoyed the show, please take a moment to leave us a review on Apple Podcasts. Your positive feedback will help us keep the show going so we can continue bringing you more future episodes. Remember, keep writing. The world needs your stories. The Writers Hangout is sponsored by the Page International Screenwriting Awards, with executive producer Kristin Overn, Sandy Adomaitis, and our music is composed by Ethan Stoller.
Alexa, you are gaslighting me.